Hello and welcome back to the Comic Literate podcast, the podcast that does deep dives into the best of comic books, graphic novels, mangas, penny dreadfuls, web comics, newspaper comics, essentially any single frame illustrations where the characters use bubbles to talk or think. I'm your host, the soon to be known as Comic Stan, and with me as always is my zestful co-host, it's Jamie. Quick, be zestful, be zestful.
Zestful?
Yes.
Zestful?
Yeah, like a zest for life. Like lemon zest.
Yeah, no, well, I'm a... You don't. I don't need
you
a
looked
fucking.
confused.
I don't need a fucking etymology for the word zest, Ryan. Like I've cooked. I know what zest is. I just don't have any zest.
Just give the conversation a zest of your personality with a grater. I think that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I can get a fucking grater if you want me to.
I don't know how you would put a personality through it specifically, but
I mean, I could imagine it.
Emergency services turning up. What happened here? Well, we tried to personality through a zest, like.
Yeah, no, I needed to be more zestful, not zesty.
Zestful.
You've finally gotten to a word I've never heard of, I think.
Wow.
Because stupid word.
Well, I mean, just because it begins with a Z doesn't necessarily mean it's it's one of the lesser used ones, so that might be why.
I'm not saying I have a prejudice against the letter Z here.
Well, apparently
Z for our American viewers.
ZZ. I think they use both.
No, they use Z.
Oh, really? Oh, fair enough.
Z for zebra.
Z. Yeah. Well, apparently it's characterized by great enthusiasm and energy, and thinking that you knew all the words, at least more than I do for sure, but thinking you might know all the words. I thought you were going to be like, yeah, zesty, here we go. It is me being zestful, come on. And I was going to be like, thank you. I did drop you into it without any warning.
Once you said zestful, I knew exactly what you meant. Like I'm not...
Like a lemon.
Yeah, no, I'm not clinically unable to like work out what a word means from its constituent roots. Like I understand language.
But to be fair, also, like even when you contextually understand a word, sometimes you'll use it and they'll be like, someone could call you out a little bit, be like, oh, what does that word mean that you just used? And you kind of then have to admit you have an idea of the meaning, but not a specific enough one to define it, if that makes sense. I'm dreadful for using words without knowing what they mean, but I don't make a conscious choice. I'm not like, I'm going to use this word even though I have no idea what the fuck it means.
You just surreptitiously try and slip surreptitious in without knowing what it means. Like,
I mean, put it this way, if I said it, I would say it in that similar context, again, without knowing what it means. He surreptitiously opened the can of baked beans.
I don't know if you can surreptitiously open baked beans, unless you were doing it really sly.
I mean, I'll give it a bloody good go.
Are you into beans?
I mean, I fuck with beans, yeah.
I don't fuck with beans.
Really? Not at all?
No, like... So, don't get me wrong, right? Kidney beans, basically any kind of bean that isn't labelled Heinz in a can with a gross piss-weak tomato sauce, I fucks with.
You know, apparently, better than Heinz, Branston. I've heard a lot of people that said they switched from Heinz to Branston.
They're all foul as far as I'm concerned. Like, runny, piss-wet.
So baked beans as a concept, you take issue with.
Fucking vile. But like, you know, chickpeas.
What about barbecue beans? So baked beans, but little barbecue sauce or something similar mixed in.
I've had a pulled pork dish, which had some beans in it, and that in that context, beans are all good.
Right.
But baked beans, barbecue beans, they're foul.
Not the mass-produced baked beans, as we know it.
Do you know what the problem is, mate? I grew up working class in Britain.
Beans every day.
Well, beans were offered to me frequently, and they always looked fucking foul.
I mean, they're not the most appealing. They are the most colour in the sea of grey that is the British Friday night dinner of nuggets and chips and.
I saw a really great it was a meme, probably Instagram, and it said French people call them hors d'oeuvres. Greek people call it French people call them hors d'oeuvres. Spanish people call them tapas. British people call it picky bits in the garden.
Yep, I've used the phrase picky bits before, and I think independently at one point I looked down and went, "This is all beige."
Well, and I think you can tell a lot by a person by what they call freezer food. Like I call it beige. I'm having beige food tonight. One of my friends calls it school dinners, which I find really charming.
God, yeah, that's a weird one. I tell you, back in middle school, so this was before we ever met, they used to do a turkey burger every...
Was it a turkey dinosaur?
No, so it looked like a normal burger, but the weird thing was, it was really delicious. And my parents I'll be like, oh, it's Wednesday, so I'm going to have the school dinner because they do the turkey burgers. And I think my parents were a bit like, okay, like, but like something was a bit, off, but they weren't quite sure.
Yeah.
And then years later, like left middle school, went to high school, obviously stopped eating them.
Yeah.
And then years later, turkey's become a big chicken substitute for healthiness. Like if you want leaner meat, you want a chicken rather than a turkey or something. And then having turkey then being like, what was in those turkey burgers that made them taste way better than turkey should have any right to be?
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, I think they were burger form of the turkey Twizzlers.
Yeah, of course
which if you're British and you've heard of Jamie Oliver, that's like the antagonist to Jamie Oliver's life was the turkey Twizzler. And to be fair, turkey Twizzler was gone for a bit. It's coming back.
Oh, they're back.
Yeah.
They're with a vengeance. I see them
Which
regularly.
makes Jamie Oliver the Star Wars protagonist who somehow turkey Twizzlers have returned. And all the accompanying evil music that comes with people opening packs of turkey Twizzlers like, no. Anyway.
Shit got weird real quick.
Switching gears here.
Shit got real weird real quick.
It is. Do we have some corners we want to address before the old main title?
Oh, fuck it. I can sit in a corner for a bit.
Yeah? Just facing the other way? Dunce hat? Do you want dunce hat?
What, because I didn't know Zestful?
No, just because that's why when you put someone in the corner, like the old like childhood thing, like put the dunce hat on them and...
Was that your childhood? Did you go to school in the 1930s?
Well, yeah, I look good for my age, obviously. That's why I think if it's like putting someone... That or Dirty Dancing, wasn't it? Putting baby
Can't
in the
put
corner.
baby in the corner.
Exactly. Those are the only references to corners in like mainstream media or pop culture. Maybe send us in. If you have any other references to corners, send them in to the show.
There's a seminal grime album.
They're called The Corners?
Boy in the Corner.
Yeah, or that with the dunce hat probably. That's where it comes from, I reckon.
Yeah. What was his name? Dizzy Rascal.
Yeah, that's
Dizzy
probably
Rascal's first album.
He's probably done something like that.
I wouldn't try to put a dunce hat on Dizzy Rascal.
Well, no, you wouldn't. I mean, I know you're nice enough not to attempt to put one on anyone, even a child that some would argue would probably deserve it. I read you'd still be too nice to do.
Ryan says as Jamie tries to surreptitiously hide the dunce hat he prepared earlier.
Is the dunce hat on the cat? You've been bad.
I mean,
she knows what she's did.
The dunce hat is cone shaped, so at some point she is going to have.
She's going to wear a dunce cone. Yeah,
so that she doesn't pick her stitches.
And you got to put a D on it. It's like the dunce is because you would eat your own stitches. That's why you're wearing the dunce cone.
The dunce cone.
Or alternatively, I'm sure you've seen it before. You can get the kids' clothes and put them on the cat.
Yes,
that does the same job and makes for great gram pics. So.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Speaking of like being put in a corner, when we were in high school, I had a teacher. I'm not going to say his name, but I'm just going to say he was my electronics teacher.
Okay.
And if you were particularly if you misbehaved, he would look at you and say, "Repeat after me. I am a pumpkin." And he would make you repeat. He would make you stand up in front of the room and say, "I am a pumpkin," and that was his form of punishment. And it seemed perfectly normal at the time, but now I look back on it, fucking weird. I mean,
compared to the 90s,
yeah, perfectly innocuous compared to what was happening in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. There was worse stuff. It was compared to 10 years ago, it was probably considered very progressive for just not touching the child.
For reference for any of our American listeners, corporal punishment was a thing in British schools until about 1985.
Yeah, the cane was the big one, wasn't it?
And the
Fingers of the cane.
rubber.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just
thrown out a window.
Well, yeah, no, you'd literally, if you misbehaved, your teacher would just pick up a big wooden rubber from a chalkboard and throw it at you. British schools.
And they had wooden handles.
Yeah, no, that would fucking hurt.
Yeah, because you would think with the side that actually takes it off, that's a soft material.
Yeah.
There's a wooden handle on the other side. So depending if it's flipping midair, it's like when someone, axe throwing.
Yeah.
If you throw an axe, 50% chance you get hit with the axe, 50% chance the handle just hits you.
Absolutely.
And obviously with the axe, the handle is the preferred side, but with the chalkboard rubber. Yeah, I haven't used the word chalkboard in so long, so I was having to process it in my brain.
I would imagine that chalkboard is going to disappear from the dictionary within the next 5 years.
To be fair, when we were there, it was probably whiteboard rubber, but same. They still had the same kind of they probably kept to the same rubbers from the chalkboards and kept using them on the whiteboards. And some like tech guy was like, you shouldn't use the old chalkboard wipers you use the spray and the wipe and all that. They said all that as well, yeah. We'll edit that out. Or put a beep over it. I don't know.
Well, we reference an actual teacher from our high school.
Yes, we'll put a beep over that. I'll beep that as well then. You give me... I'm just going to cut this whole part out now because there's too many beeps. One I would have done. Two would be like, I'm too busy for this. This whole part's getting cut out now.
Oh.
Do that when we're not on the podcast because this is the most impenetrable banter, the most unrelatable stuff that you could possibly... I might cut back in at this point just so everyone knows that I've just cut out some personal information about a teacher we had in high school.
Yeah.
But now I'm coming back so people can hear me being like, why are we talking about this on here? No one's going to understand it.
It's just nice to reminisce sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, but we do that off air. People might be surprised to know we interact off air.
It doesn't sound like it sometimes, does it?
I mean, no. I mean, sometimes it's like, who are you again? But that's the podcast game, baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what have you been reading, or what is your comic book with too many words and not enough pictures?
Yeah, no, I've started reading fiction again in an effort to be right, good, smart once more.
Right, good, smart? Nice.
Right, good, proper smart. So I'm reading All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy being an American novelist from mid-20th century. He was a real miserable fucker, and it really shines through in his books.
Most authors are, I would hazard a guess.
Yeah, and this is a book about this teenager who is losing his family ranch that he grew up on, and navigating his really, really difficult relationship with his mum, who's gone off to be an actress in California. Very, very emotive, beautifully written. It's less interesting when I'm not reading a weird non-fiction book about fish, isn't it?
I mean, the non-fiction one, so the fish one had a lot of opportunities for me to butt in and make Call of Duty jokes.
Yeah.
Whereas like a real heartfelt, like sincere story is kind of like, well, I feel bad if I make a joke about it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how are you finding it in terms of the quality of the writing, shall we say?
Oh, he's a great writer. It's a bit impenetrable because he doesn't like to tell you who's speaking very often.
Right.
He very, very rarely does he say, Josh says, and so you're constantly trying to work out who's speaking, and you're kind of being very, very, you're having to be quite purposeful when you're reading it to try and work out who's speaking a lot of the time. But I think that just makes you read it more closely,
right?
Which has been really fun. It's been really fun to read something closely. It's been really fun to read a story that I have to pay attention to by a really great novelist, instead of just reading weird non-fiction books and comic books.
Well, this is a theme that we've had with, I think some of the most recent titles we've looked at, is that the ones that are written better or in a more realistic way in terms of realistic dialogue and stuff, you do have to pay that extra attention, like in real life, because in real life people don't go like, hello Jamie, my friend who I first met in high school and have worked with since and now host a podcast with. Like, that's part of it. And when books are written, or any kind of fiction is written or presented in that way, you do have to pay that extra attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's becoming more of a problem in this day and age.
Yeah,
with the somehow like in not developed ADHD kind of level from phone interaction, stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Which I find that like doing anything, like unless it's reading would probably be a lot better for me in this regard. But unless I'm sitting down reading a comic or I'm playing a video game, unless it's those two things, anything else, like watching TV, film, wrestling, whatever, the phone is always there and I'm pick it up, look, you start doing stuff. Like, I haven't paid attention for like 5 minutes.
I have to put my phone in another room to read.
Yeah.
Like physically my phone goes into a different room so that I can read.
Yeah, I have a very kind of weird, like, my hands will be needing just to do something.
Yeah.
So if it's comics, literally even just on the computer, just clicking the button, turning the page, that's enough.
Yeah.
Video games, obviously hands are interacted. But with video games, it's like just, the hands obviously got the controller.
Yeah.
But as soon as it's TV, film, or anything just passive, like physically passively just watching, the hand is just like, pick up the phone, go on it, have a look. And I have to resist that urge.
I have 2 phones as well.
Drug dealer.
Yeah. Obviously. Who the fuck else has time to podcast?
Is it a work phone or what?
Yeah, I have a work phone as well.
All right.
But I have a really busy work phone.
Right.
And
Can
so
you turn it off outside hours?
well, I do. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I do.
Tim, we couldn't get a hold of you. Oh, I assumed I could turn that off. You're on call. You're a surgeon. Like, oh, I just turned it off.
I think the people who call my work phone don't like the fact that I turn it off when I'm not working. But also, what am I just going to answer the phone to you and be like, "Fuck off, I'm not working." Hang up.
Yeah, it's more polite in that situation to not pick it up.
Yeah.
And then when they're like, "What happened?" You'd be like, "Oh, when I'm not working, I put it in a safe in the basement or something."
When I'm not working, I just give it to a toddler to play with.
Jamie can't come to the phone right now. Like,
Jamie's a po-po head.
I've got a child taking my messages while I'm out of office. Not very good at it.
Somebody called Mr. Policeman rang.
What did you tell them? What did you say?
Where are the hostages? I'm Batman.
Quite the tangent.
I'm Batman.
Yes, you are sometimes. In the sense that you beat up poor people.
Oh, shit.
We've seen the latest controversy from the Blue Beetle trailer.
I don't know what any of those words mean.
So, the new DC film that's coming out soon is the Blue Beetle, who is a DC superhero.
That's a terrible name for a superhero.
Well, it's interesting. It's the original Blue Beetle. The best reference for you will be the original Blue Beetle was what a night owl from The Watchmen was based on. So he was that kind of character.
Yeah.
But from like Golden Age kind of era, they kept the character name and kind of rejigged the character into a more modern version where instead of being a rich guy with gadgets, he's now like an alien suit that latches onto his spine and is like a kind of Iron Man suit kind of thing.
It's got the kid who played Miguel in
Yes.
Cobra Kai in it.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen the trailer, yeah.
So, bit in the trailer, his uncle, one of them references Batman, and that's like they put that in intentionally to be like part of a bigger universe, but we don't know which one because there's about 10 different Batmans right now. We don't know who's going to stay in or not. But someone mentions Batman, he goes, Batman's a fascist. And apparently people genuinely took issue with that, being like, bloody James Gunn, who's redoing the DC universe, he hates Batman, he thinks he's a fascist. Like, you don't understand that this character within the story is the character who would think that about Batman because he's like, I think like a conspiracy theory kind of character.
Nice, cool.
But it was such a dumb thing for people to get like genuinely upset about because they think these fictional characters are real people they have to defend. Yeah. Not even that they think they're real people, but just like the arguments that happen about like who would win, Batman versus Superman. Like people get really fucking irate about shit like that.
Also, there's an obvious correct answer.
Well, what you think is the obvious correct answer, I'm almost willing to bet is the least represented outcome whenever they've happened in comics.
Does Batman always win?
Not always, but Batman's won on 2 major occasions, I'd say. 2 of the more well-known occasions.
To quote Hank Green, Batman is just a rich guy with an affinity to bats.
Yes. But here's the thing. Batman, the consensus is the Batman apparently will win any fight if he has preparation time. That's the most common consensus. So if he knows what he's up against and he has time to prepare for it, he will find a way to win. So when it comes to Superman, the biggest one was, it kind of accounts, but it doesn't, was Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. In that one, Batman is older and Superman is still Superman because
he's Superman. He doesn't age.
Kryptonians don't age, yeah. But so they have a fight because Batman's being Batman when he shouldn't have been Batman anymore. And Frank Miller writes Batman really well, but he doesn't write Superman very well. So Superman's like a pro-government like kind of guy. He's like, well, if the government say it, so I've got to enforce it kind of thing. Which any real Superman comics, like Superman's very, free thinker, kind of like, I do what's right, in my head. But he's also very kind of like, I'm a god on this earth, so I'm not going to interfere a lot in how Earth operates. But he won't then just be like, oh, I'll go along with this. Like, if Superman was around in 1930s Germany, he wouldn't be like, well, the government said so, so off you go then.
So I'm not allowed to give the name of one of our old school teachers, but you can talk about the Nazis.
The Nazis are going to sue us for what's the word? Libel against them or something. That's the risk, is what I'm saying.
Hey, we have to be careful.
We have to treat old high school teachers and Nazis the exact same way.
I mean, Some of our old high school teachers might be Nazis. You
They
know.
might be. For without verifying for sure, there's a few that definitely look like they could have been.
Fucking A, yeah.
So Superman in that one, Batman wins because he got like a whole armor suit thing ready to fight him. But even knowing that wouldn't do the job, and all the other stuff he had planned that just slowed Superman down a little bit. The ultimate thing was he had Green Arrow, who Superman had previously, again, badly written Superman, had ripped one of his arms off because he refused to stop being a superhero as well. He fires an arrow at Superman, which is a kryptonite releasing arrow. So Superman catches the arrow, as he would, but it releases a gas kryptonite, and that obviously fucks him up. And
Kryptonite's dumb as well. I'm sorry. Kryptonite's just such a dumb idea.
do you know where kryptonite actually came from?
It wasn't originally part of the canon, was it?
No, not
it was
in the
like
comics.
a radio show or something?
Yeah, but do you know why? It's a fun story.
What, wasn't there an episode where somebody wasn't about?
The guy who voiced Superman wanted a holiday. So they created the concept of kryptonite
So that he could have a week off.
Yeah, so for a week, it's like, Superman's in the hospital bed because they finally found one thing that actually, like, weakens him. And then the next week, like, I'm fine now again. I was partially weakened for a bit, but now I'm back to normal because kryptonite's a weakness, but it's not that deadly to me.
Wild, isn't it?
Yeah. But, I mean, it makes sense in the sense of, like, if you have a godlike character, I think it does actually... I'm not even the biggest Superman fan, but I think it balances well when you've got an infinitely, powerful, godlike character, but then you have a thing that's completely benign to everyone else, weakens him. And
It's Achilles, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. This day and age, it's the archetypal weakness, isn't it? Is the kryptonite is a synonym for Achilles' heel, for a weakness now.
Would you like a donut? Oh, they're my kryptonite.
Exactly, yeah. But so yeah, Batman won that way, and he had a little speech about the strength of the kryptonite. I measured out so it wouldn't kill you, but just weaken you, and that's because I want you to know that I beat you, and I want you to remember in your darkest moments that Batman beat you. That kind of thing.
Honestly, I'm gonna say something now.
You don't like Batman?
No, I don't.
That's fair.
I just think that it's been done to fucking death, and like he's not that interesting a character. The whole tortured rich guy thing just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, he's been around since the 50s, so
And
it's...
his villains, fucking dumb.
I like some of his villains. He's got one of the best rogue gallery of any superhero.
No, he has a clown,
Hmm.
a geezer in a suit called Penguin, a fucking civil servant whose face got burned. They're all dumb. So stupid.
Yeah, you've named the dumber ones. Mr. Freeze is a good character when he was redone to actually have a sympathetic background. Ra's al Ghul can be very interesting.
Catwoman's the only good one.
Well, she's barely an antagonist though nowadays, especially nowadays. But she's come across some more anti-hero than
because she was good. Because she was a good antagonist, and they were like, "We want her on the roster."
Yeah, but the only reason she didn't get like the same treatment as everyone else was that one, she was a thief, so she wasn't killing people. So Batman was very kind of like, I don't like your nicking stuff, and if I see you doing it, I'm gonna make you put it back.
I'm gonna call your mum.
Yeah, but I'm not coming at you with the same intensity as like the murderers, which is fair enough.
It's reasonable, isn't it?
Who was a good one?
It's weird for a rich guy.
Well,
most rich guys would count theft as a much higher crime than murder.
Well, Batman...
Because murder is the crime that they commit on a daily basis.
Yes, all of them. But the thing with Batman is interesting is that's the latest... Well, murder's the least of the bloody problems.
So that can stay in. That can stay in, right?
To an arbitrary... the billionaires, like, to those people. Not down the road teacher from high school.
Who could knock on your door.
I heard what you said on my podcast. Like, oh my God.
Let's face it, the address they had on the file from you in 2007 is still the same one.
It might be.
Like, I could just come and fucked up.
We knew you were still here. How?
Imagine just turning up and knocking on your door.
You know what's good? I've already downloaded a Beep soundtrack because I made a TikTok short which just came out at some point, regardless of when this comes out. But it's one where you swore, but it was such a important context to the clip. So I put a beep in instead of taking it out.
It, yeah.
Well, it just came out today. So have you seen it today?
No.
No, so you had a swear on a previous one. I lowered the volume.
Yeah.
But this one, because the swear was actually important, like it wasn't just like you swore just as like a normal swear. This was like contextually, like you are getting across meaning with this word.
It's a contextually important swear.
Exactly. But because obviously YouTube and TikTok and all that, I just put a beep over it. But the beep, I like the beep as a swear. I like the stereotypical, like when someone's on a thing.
So I find the bleep to be more charming than just a string of characters.
Yes, exactly. But I'm talking about in an audio visual form, it always takes me back to the Jerry Springer. Like that's, I think, where it first became popular.
Yeah.
And there's something so funny about someone who's just like on a tirade of swears, but it's all the beeps.
Yeah.
And you have to like, you play almost a game where you kind of try and work out what they're saying.
Swear it is,
and and the really fun ones where like in comedies and stuff where they do intentionally, they put in normal words in between them.
Yeah.
So you hear like beep 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 penguin beep beep. Like, what the what the
beep? What the beep is going on here?
Exactly. Great one reference. If anyone's looking for something very funny, use of it. Auntie Donna, the sketch group, they have a thing where whenever people swear in their sketches, I don't think it's all the time, but they went through a phase where whenever they were swearing, they would put beeps in, but just really bad ones.
Yeah.
So it was almost like, what the fuck? I heard the word. So they put in intentionally bad ones, which obviously made it a lot funnier.
That is funny. Like that, I like Auntie Donna.
Yeah, and the beeps are funny as well. You know, while we're on this topic, we're eventually going to get to my corner. I wasn't even going to talk about this, but I've been watching the new Auntie Donna series.
Yeah.
So
what, House of Fun, the second season of it?
No. So it's a different show.
Oh, is it?
Australian network TV show, but it's on some streaming. But it's they're basically like continuing a series. It's doing a new sketch show, but it's them running a coffee shop. So it's Auntie Donna's coffee shop, or I might be getting the title wrong, but it's something basically like that. But basically, if you like Auntie Donna at all, it's just their humor again.
Yeah.
Like the thing about their humor is literally they just pick a setting as just like, you know, when a sketch group is like, we need a place, and then but they'll ask
like
for like
improv.
Improv, like a job and a. But literally, all they need is a place, and then they just go. Like
They're
they don't.
So
they don't
funny,
else.
aren't they?
They're
all
hilarious.
so funny.
Yes, and you know what really bummed me out? I was watching them, and one of the characters they're talking about. There's a joke about like not having had a 7th birthday. So one of the others goes, "I can't believe you're only 7 still." It's like, no, I didn't. I missed a birthday. I kept growing. Like that's the joke. But at one point, one of them goes, he makes the joke again, like, yeah, for a bloody 7-year-old. He goes, I'm 33. But I got hit with the, someone who's close to my age is really talented and has achieved a lot in life. My day is ruined. Like,
I experienced that phenomenon really recently.
I think it increases as you get older. And in this day and age, especially where you constantly see people doing stuff.
It was Billy Strings.
Yeah, I don't know who that is, so.
He's phenomenal bluegrass player. And I looked him up, and he's younger than me. Younger than me, Ryan.
I mean,
he's got Grammys, and he's so good.
I get that with some wrestlers now because one, wrestling being a athletic thing, they're skewed more younger because they have to be able to do some of the stuff. But also, there's a couple of people. There's two specifically. One is Billy Starks and another called remember his name, Nick Wayne, and they are both turning 18 this year, and Billy Stark, she's just started an AEW contract, and Nick Wayne is starting went on his 18th birthday.
Yeah.
And the reason they're signing them is because legally they couldn't be given contracts if they were under 18.
Yeah.
But they've already been hitting the indies and impressing people so much that
it's disgusting, isn't it?
It got to a point where they were literally like, you would be on cable television if you were 18. Like that's you are so good.
You're already this good.
Yes, and the only thing keeping you from being more famous right now is legality. Like that's the only reason you're not more famous.
It reminds me of The Sun in the noughties.
Literally, how long it's been. My mind just went straight to the planetary star, the sun. But do you remember what it was like in the noughties? Do you remember what it was like back then?
No, do you know the Sun newspaper?
Yeah, I'm aware of the Sun newspaper.
For our American listeners, the Sun newspaper is a tabloid newspaper in
proper
Britain.
dirt sheet, I would describe it as.
I think the average Sun article requires you to have the reading age of an 8-year-old.
And the comprehension of race relations from the 1800s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And on page 3 of the Sun would be a photograph of a lady with very little clothing on.
Sometimes none.
Sometimes none. Well, this is the thing.
Mm.
There was a model who they wanted to do a page 3 spread.
Oh, I know where you're going with
but
this.
But she had to be 18, and so for like 2 weeks or a week leading up to it, they would photograph her with a little bit less clothing on.
Jesus.
As a 17-year-old girl, culminating in her finally being able to do her page 3 spread when she turned 18. It was like fucking nonce chicken. It was the worst thing I've ever heard of. And you just reminded me of it, where it's like, you could be on page 3. The only thing that's stopping you is that you're not 18.
As you say, I was talking about a really positive thing, and you're
Yeah.
do you remember when humanity was even more a piece of shit? Like, do you remember that? That's what reminded me of. Like, I remember.
But you remember it, right? You know what I'm talking about.
I tell you what, I didn't see any of the specific stuff, but I 100% believe. Like, I
no,
know it was a general thing that happened.
I've never seen the actual.
I didn't know the specific case.
Yeah,
but I 100% believe they did it because that's the Sun. That's entirely what they're like.
It's really funny as well because the Sun used to. One of the things that they would do to sell papers is just make people desperately afraid of paedophiles. And I love the idea. I fucking love the idea of somebody sitting on like a Saturday morning reading the Sun going, I'm so scared of paedophiles, and I also can't wait until this 17-year-old girl I've just gotten horny over is 18 so I can actually look at her tits.
And now 2 decades later, the Republican Party are banning drag shows for the sake of children, but also keeping child marriage legal.
It's wild. Oh no, we've done it.
You know the term, was it Ouroboros? The snake that eats its tail? That's us, man. That's us. We live in that.
Oh, Ryan, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
All right, we'll change the subject.
Just kill me. Just fucking kill me.
On the topic of humans dying, the title this week is about aliens who sometimes kill humans. So that's a good segue. Speaking of segues, you know the guy who made the Segway? I think, did he die on a Segway or something?
Did he?
I don't know. I heard that, but I don't know if it's true or not.
There's a fun story about Mike Wozniak.
He fell off a Segway, didn't he?
No, he was one of the... Him
and Steve Jobs.
Yeah. So he was one of the founders of Apple. And when Seth Rogen was playing him, he met him and had dinner with him. And he was a really early adopter of the Segway.
Right.
So early that his Segway didn't have a headlight on it. He had an original one. And so him and his wife left dinner with Seth Rogen and he handed her a torch. And they strapped torches to their Segways and scuttled off on them. And I just find that, like, the money that man must have.
Well, he was the more humble of the creators, wasn't he?
Oh, he seems like such a dude.
Yeah. Whereas Steve Jobs was like, I'm a genius, but also I'm going to try and treat my cancer with fruit and vegetables, and I'm not going to take any baths.
Oh, he did that, didn't he?
Yeah, he was not the brightest.
Steve Wozniak was the technical one as well, wasn't he?
And
he
just
was
a normal dude. Like, he had common sense as well as was quite smart in this specific area as well. Cannot be understated how important common sense is, despite being geniuses at certain areas. That includes us, because we are both geniuses at podcasting, but we're terrible at everything else in life. We're probably closer to the Wozniak than the Steve Jobs of the two. Yeah. But better to be a Wozniak. Anyway, and if you take nothing else from this podcast today, that's the lesson.
Be a Wozniak.
Don't be a Jobs, be a Wozniak. I think that's good. I think that's good advice.
At any point now, in any future episode where a character does something really stupid, I'm going to have to contain myself from being like they were being a bit of a Jobs there.
I think that's a good general, like, if someone does anything wrong, it's like, were they Jobs level or Wozniak level? So Wozniak level is like, you're just a normal guy. Like, you made a mistake, that's normal. Jobs level is like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, that was dumb as fuck what you just did. That's the level. But they could also be like, the world's best assassin or something like that.
Yeah,
that's the perfect example. So
Batman.
Like, yeah, but depends on what reading or whatever it is. Bruce Batman.
Yeah, Bruce Batman.
Yeah. It depends who's writing him.
I saw you mull that one over. I saw you.
I was
choose
generally trying
whether-
to think about whether he's done anything I would consider stupid or not. And for me, and I've not read that much Batman. I've read like the big hits, but I've not like followed him consistently. The dumbest I think I've ever seen him written was probably in Batman v Superman, and that was the "Why did you say that name? Who is Martha? Martha's my mum's name. Why are you saying my mum's name? Is your mum named Martha? We should be best friends." Took no jobs. So that's the dumbest I've seen Batman written. But normally he's written pretty well. So I'd say normally he's written more like a Wozniak than a Jobs. Anyway, the title of the comic book.
We've just gone fucking miles off course today, haven't we?
Yeah, well, we needed it. We needed to refresh. We are talking about a 2019 title, so kind of recent, not old, but not new either. But we're talking about a title, a limited release, limited series, Meet the Skrulls. So the main reason for it is because there is a MCU show coming out, probably soon around when this episode comes out, that's called Secret Invasion. And do you know much about the Secret Invasion? Or
No, but I have so many questions.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer. Comic book questions, that's like my dream.
When you told me about it, I thought you said Meet the Skrulls.
So you've read a title about Skrulls?
Well, no, but the whole time I was like, when am I going to see the Skrulls? Because they don't call each other Skrulls until quite late.
I mean, they have, I think there's some mention of like, you should be more of a bloody Skrull.
I was like 2.5 issues in and I realised that.
They say at the dinner table, for sure. They definitely say Skrull at the dinner table.
Yeah. So it was when I got to the dinner table that I realised that there were no Skrulls.
Right.
But to start with, I was really confused.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, this was a bit by design because I thought, with me knowing all the information, I thought it'd be good to get your perspective as someone who doesn't know it, but then seeing how the story, how it stands up without the references.
I didn't have a lick of sense. It didn't make a lick of sense to me.
That's fair. And but like
I liked the I liked the shape shifting shenanigans. Like I generally like any kind of fantasy or sci-fi where people shape shift.
When they shave shit.
When they shave shit. Yeah. When they take an actual log of feces and they, with a razor.
Julienne it.
Oh, Julienne.
That's a very posh word for such an awful subject.
And for Madame, I'll have the Julienne poop.
Only in France. I need to stop making fun of the French on here.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Like I clocked it in one of our TikToks.
It's such an easy topic. But one thing I will say is very proud of their rioting right now. Grade A protesting and rioting. Like one of the best. And also the whole thing about them surrendering, that was like propaganda from World War II, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, an invading force has overpowered us and has like defeated our forces and entered our country, and we have to surrender to save the lives of our, men and women and children who are here and not fighters. And then everyone else in Europe and America like, bloody surrender in French. Like, why?
It's funny because in Britain it'll be like heating bills have gone up by literally hundreds of %. The king's brother is a nonce. And nobody can afford groceries anymore, and we just kind of sit here like, yeah, this is fine. And the French are like, what? They're raising the retirement age by 1 year. I will go to Paris and I will fuck shit up.
To be fair, it was 2 years, so even more worthy of
Do you know what's
that
hilarious?
response. What?
The age they wanted to raise it to is still lower than the retirement age in Britain.
Yeah.
I fucking love the French.
Yeah, no, they're good.
Oh, mate, yeah, they're
but
brilliant.
Because I hold them in such high esteem, I also enjoy taking the piss every once in a while. But in mind, more in like bloody French. Like, that's my punchline most of the time. Like, oh, of course, the bloody French. That's that. I'm not saying anything. I'm not making any points about them other than they are there and they exist.
Do you know what they're calling us at the moment?
Probably things we can't even put on this podcast.
The frozen turnips.
I don't know if I'd be offended if I heard that in person. I'd be more confused.
It's because we are freezing in our hovels right now.
Right. Okay.
And we
that
can't
makes
afford
sense.
proper food. And so we are just a bunch of frozen turnips.
Yeah, the turnip part's still weird.
It's them just being like, why are they not dealing with that situation in a way that we think is reasonable, i.e., Revolution.
Yeah, and I agree with them. Break out the guillotine, I say. Greatest invention of theirs.
That's very severe.
Invention so good that it kept the French name, and it wasn't a food or a sex act. So that's how good the guillotine is, that it survived.
What French sex acts are there?
I think Ménage à Trois. That's the one I always think of.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, everything cool is named after the French, like a French inhale.
Yeah, or there's like a croissant, like that's
or a French stick.
Yeah, but that's us being like French stick, not like calling it a French name. It's like it's French, like French stick. I'm calling it.
Yeah, no, it's not a baguette.
Like exactly, baguette. That's too difficult to say. I'm calling it French stick. What shape is it? It's a stick made out of bread. It's from France. So I'm calling it a French stick. Like, angry British refusing to. Not even learn,
I like it.
Not even learn the language, just to say the words at all. Baguette. I'm calling it a baguette or a French stick.
It's a baguette bread, that is, my man.
Do you want some French stick with that? It's like, baguette. Yeah. Incidentally, one time I was in a queue for Subway years ago, back when my palate still deemed Subway as acceptable food, because it's fucking dog shit now. But and it probably was back then as well. But I was in the queue for Subway, and the guy in front of me literally he was asking for his toppings, and he went, and yeah, can you put some jalapenos on there? And I'm behind it, so like, even I know that's wrong. Even I know you're saying that, you're butchering that. Because especially here, like, we'll give it like a jalapenos to be like, we know the pronunciation. It's like, you just sound more of a, like, I just sounded like a dick saying it then.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then you go the other extreme, it's jalapenos.
Yeah, I'll take some jalapenos, please. I'm of two minds, because, it really bothers me when people mispronounce foreign words. But what I find even more jarring is when people overpronounce foreign words.
Yes.
Chorizo. Fuck off, it's chorizo.
Yeah. Yeah, when someone says it too much,
I'll have some gazpacho. No, it's gazpacho. I know that's how they actually say it in Spain.
There's a comedian I knew in London who has a bit, and I can't remember his name, so I can't credit him with the bit. I don't think he's made it famous, so I don't know if it's that much of an issue for me to say his bit. But there was a comedian in London who had a bit which was pretty good, and basically the joke was that he was talking to his mum around Christmas, and she said, "Oh, I heard that new song from that Michael Bubble," and he was like, "You know it's Bublé, right?" And she goes, "Oh, right. Well, I guess that's a little embarrassing." And then she goes, "Well, actually, now that I think about it, I think I'm better off saying it that way than to really be Bublé and me to read it and say Bubble, because if it was the opposite way, I would have looked a lot worse."
Yeah.
If it's literally Michael Bubble and you went, "Who was that? Michael Bublé?" Be like, "What?" It's a good joke.
His name does have an accent, though, doesn't it?
Yeah. Are you putting off talking about this comic because you didn't enjoy it?
Yeah, I'm gonna come straight in and say that it was a bit. I mean, I have questions.
All right. Well, I'll start by saying it's a limited issue, 5-issue limited series from 2019.
Yeah.
So we're not bothering with the spoilers or anything. Yeah. I think that's fair enough. If you're interested in Skrulls or anything, as much as a non-spoiler little bit I'll give is, if you're interested in Skrulls, it's an interesting aspect of their story. Normally, they're only ever like antagonists. They're a famous Fantastic Four antagonist specifically because they're space-based and everything.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this this version of them is an interesting take. And I'll give the little blurb as well. And then we'll go to you recommending it without spoiling it, because even though we're not doing spoilers, but I still think like we should exercise that part of your brain. So I'll give you the blurb. What voice do you want it said in this week?
What are my options?
I don't know. Pick a voice and I'll butcher it as best I can.
We've already done Alan Moore, haven't we?
I mean, to say I did it is a bit gracious. I'd say I attempted it.
Can you do it in my Will Smith from Suicide Squad voice?
Oh yeah, easily. That's the only other. That's the only other one I've got. So, Dawners are your typical family.
It was better than I thought it would be. Oh, and then the cat attacked. Everything's gone wrong.
She was like, why is he making noise? I better sink my claws in him just in case.
Sorry, I'm going to let you go. Okay, I'm going to take a break.
Are you sure you're going to be able to actually listen to me do it?
I'm going to have to.
All right. So as I was saying, before I was rudely interrupted, the Warners are your typical family. Dad works at Stark. Mom works in a senator's office. Jennifer and Alice are students at Stanford High School. The only thing that makes them different is their shape-shifting Skrulls, and have infiltrated our society to pave the way for a Skrull invasion. Robbie Thompson, Spider-Man and Deadpool, and Niko Henrichon, Doctor Strange, Pride of Baghdad, bring the Marvel Universe down to Earth with a bold new look at the Skrulls Look at the Skrulls that will test even your loyalty. I don't know what they mean by that because nothing about the comic tested my loyalty in any way. I mean, now we're coming to you.
Questions.
First, how would you recommend? I would say, how would you describe this to someone who was considering reading it, but without spoiling it?
You know that one bit in The Men in Black where the monster from the hole starts wearing people's skin?
Yes.
If you really liked that bit of Men in Black and you wished that was set in the high school from Mean Girls, you'll probably like Meet the Skrulls.
One of my notes literally did say Skrulls meets Mean Girls.
Yeah, 100%. That tone.
Yeah. There's like one page that's extremely Mean Girls, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In the best possible way.
And you know what? I feel like if it because there are two vaguely interesting things that are happening. There's the high school drama element and the fact that Dad works for Tony Stark, right?
Yeah.
If they'd have fully explored either of them, I probably would have enjoyed it. But they lift the skirt of both without actually showing us anything interesting.
Well, my general thoughts by the time I finished it, I think you'll agree. I thought for the first three, it's a 5-issue run. I think for the first 3 issues, I thought this is all very interesting stuff. Like they're setting up very interesting stuff. And then by the 4th and 5th issue, I was like, oh, we've wrapped everything.
Yeah. It was just wrapped up in a really neat little package really quickly.
And this is a common thing with my issue with superhero titles in general, is there's a lot of interesting ideas and premises. Not, you get off the premises, like that kind of. There's a lot of interesting concepts for like an initial premises, but they either wrap things up too quickly, which they've kind of done here, or they default into more tropey endings or resolutions.
Yeah, how did you feel about the ending?
The ending, again, I think it just tied things up too quickly. I didn't think it was a bad ending, but I felt like it was a rushed ending. But not in the sense that, like, oh, they thought they had more issues to explore things and then didn't. I think, again, I said the first half of it was creating interesting premises, and then by the 4th or 5th, they were like, we don't have to worry about that stuff now. It's all gone now. It's all fine. I still think they did interesting stuff. Like, again, the general premise of this family in hiding. And this actually, really interestingly, I just started watching a TV show. This is my corner again, but it's pure coincidence. Before I even read the comic and remembered that I was reading this comic for today, I tried the first episode of the show The Americans on Disney. Yeah. And that is literally Cold War spies pretending to be family. So I had that to contrast to, and that's a really good version of this trope.
Well, so the dad, the father,
yes,
he was Mum's son, right?
No, I don't think so.
Mate, I'm honestly...
They were off separate worlds. So there's a part where they're talking between them, and they're talking about meeting their handler, Mogoth, whatever his name is.
The one who turns himself into the dad and starts murdering them all.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's the ending.
Yeah.
But
the only vaguely interesting bit of the whole thing.
Well, there's other little bits which I'll get into for sure. But that bit where they're talking and he says, "Oh, Mogoth or whatever wants to meet again," and she goes like, "Well, I'm the senior of the too.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, but we're Throne World people. So
Right,
they're
well-
from the same Skrull planet.
Right. Well, again, this is I had questions.
That's fair. And I think a good criticism of it is it's not a comic you can go in without knowledge of the references.
Yeah. So it cut back to Throne World, and they were losing their grip on Throne World.
I think it was getting eaten by Galactus.
Right. What's Galactus?
Right, so the guy, I did wonder if you were going to recognize him or not. Galactus is kind of known a bit outside of like the hardcore fandom. He's a giant space creature that looks like a guy in weird armor who eats planets to live. He's the guy who created the Silver Surfer. So
Why am I getting the same vibe from him as I was from the villain in that Alan Moore Superman comic? Yeah.
Oh, what was his name? Mongol? So
So you see him
Galactus is
coming.
like the size of a solar system, or like that kind of like
He doesn't sneak up.
to. Yeah. If you're on a planet and he's heading your way, you'd be like, I think there's a guy there. Hey, there's a guy at normal size. Oh no, he's just really far away. That's how they see Galactus coming.
Yeah, Galactus and Heimdall exist in the same universe, don't they?
He's either normal size or he's really far away, and we're in trouble. Yeah, of course.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
But the point is, Galactus travels the universe eating planets to live. So when you see the Throne World planet getting messed up, and then Galactus, it's the reference is Galactus is eating their planet,
Right, okay.
and that's why it's being destroyed.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, they're losing a war, but they were also talking about taking over planets, and it just made no sense to me.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And I think, I like comparatively to the Supergirl comic we read, I feel like that had some but far less references required. Like I think you got more out of the Supergirl comic without knowing any of the references.
I know less about DC comics than I do Marvel.
Yeah.
And I followed that and enjoyed it.
Yeah. So
whereas with this, I was often just like, huh?
yeah, and I think that's
What's going on?
when approaching these superhero comics, I think it's better for you to not know this stuff, because I think of the two of us, it gives us different like viewpoints of the comic. And if one can work without the required knowledge, I think that's then a credit to the writing.
Yeah.
Whereas in
100%.
this case, this one relied on previous characters and events and information.
Like, I got who Tony Stark was.
Yeah,
obviously.
I figured that is the one you would at least get.
And I recognized, what's her name?
Pepper Potts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognized Pepper Potts, and obviously because of like, I imagine that modern Marvel comics have gone the same way as the films, and
Yes.
so like when I saw Pepper Potts not in a suit, I was like, oh, okay, this roughly contextualizes like what kind of Tony Stark I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then you see him twice for 2 panels, and he's gone.
And I do like stories that have that kind of like, the bigger universe is happening over here, and we're getting brief touches of it, but then it's gone, and it does contextualize where this normality is in relation to, because it's all well and good being like, hey, it's aliens being a white picket fence middle America thing, and also there's a Galactus and there's Iron Man.
Yeah.
Like it's not like Third Rock from the Sun, which was a hardcore like, there are aliens, but they are humans, and that's it. Like that's all that we've got to work with. That it didn't rely on, like, the only storylines it had with other aliens were like, they were like character and relationship based. So it wasn't like, oh no, the world is ending, we have to save it with our alien powers. It was like the head of the aliens comes down and he's like, what have you been doing with the mission? They'd be like, we've been like just chilling with the humans.
We like it here.
Yeah. So Third Rock from the Sun, a good version of this. And I think what's interesting in reading these comics is finding out tropes that do exist, but you only see once it's parodied or dissected or just used, used like this one. A good version of this trope in a comic is one I've recommended to you before, and I think we'll do at one point, is the Vision comic by Tom King.
Read it.
Okay, there you go. So that's that. I compared this a lot to that.
Yeah, it's
even
sick. It's
even
so
though
good.
the Vision one, they're not in hiding,
No.
but it still feels like fitting in, and yeah.
Oh man, we should talk about that one because after you talked about it, I skimmed through it, and really enjoyed it, and then watched some WandaVision as well. And was like, oh, this is pretty good shit too.
And you could tell why that was an inspiration for that. Yeah. So this one, it does feel like I think that's what drew me to reading this back when it first came out in 2019.
Oh, had you already read this?
I had read it, but literally so long ago. I say so long ago, 4 years ago, and it was such a short run. And as you pointed out, nothing that significant happens in it, so I didn't barely remember anything from it. So I had to reread it, and it was almost like reading it again.
I feel as though this is one that you would get something out of if you were regularly and routinely reading through Marvel Universe stuff.
And I think especially...
Is that what it was? Is that the audience that it was meant for, right?
I think
it was
so.
meant for the hardcore.
Yes, and not only because of needing the information to know, the references and the other characters and Galactus and everything. I also think it serves a good purpose when you're reading Marvel or DC and it's constantly like, ooh, there's another villain and it's the end of the world and everything's on the line, and if the hero doesn't make it then everyone dies. Like that's the constant theme, or it's either at that or it's always ramping up to that in about like 100 titles at one time across both companies. So when you're reading those every week and then suddenly you get the Skrulls are hiding in America, and they're that becomes a bit of a little bit of a palate cleanser when you're in the middle of those. Yes,
because everything was quite low stakes, wasn't it?
Exactly. And to be honest, I like those low stakes superhero shows if they're written very well. Like again, come back to the Supergirl one, which I think you didn't even consider that well written. I think am I right to say you thought good, not great for the Supergirl one?
I liked it.
Yeah. So good, at least good, yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
So I thought that was generally low stakes, but the characters made it feel like high stakes because these were important things to the characters, weren't they?
Yeah, and to stay on that one for a minute, in comparison, obviously it was a longer run.
Yeah.
And we had fewer important characters to follow.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really enjoyed about it, and one of the things that whoever wrote it, I forget who it was now.
Tom King, Supergirl.
Was it Tom King?
Yeah, that was Tom King.
One of the things that Tom King did really well is have these defined voices for all these characters, and I really got a sense of who they were.
Yeah.
The two daughters, I was constantly having to backtrack to work out which one was doing things.
Yes, there was some hair color change. So one of them had black hair as a Skrull and a human, but the other one had black hair as a Skrull and blonde hair as a human.
Yeah.
So it became then having to remember that the blonde-haired human is the shorter Skrull.
Yeah.
So you had to kind of remind yourself.
But you're not looking at them in comparison with full body images for every panel. So you're like, who's doing what and where are they going?
An even bigger problem, the storyline about the sibling who had died, they were also black-haired.
Yeah.
So when it came to the flashback of how the third sibling died, they looked all the same as the Skrulls.
I had to skim it twice. So I read it once and then skimmed back through it, and it wasn't really until the second pass that I realised there was a dead sibling.
Yeah.
I really struggled to follow this.
I actually made note that I appreciated the way they got across the sibling who had previously died. I did appreciate how they did it. It was right in the middle of, I judged it as being in the middle of subtle and obvious. Like it was kind of right in the middle there. It wasn't so subtle to be like really well written, but it was not obvious enough that it felt like, oh, you remind me of the other Skrull child who died previously and we're still mourning. Like it wasn't that. So it was just about enough in the middle of one of them storming away from the table, being like, "Oh, I won't compare to her."
Yeah,
and it's obviously a child. She's not there. There's 4 settings at the table. I appreciate that kind of inferring of what happened, and then it just gets more obvious as it goes along.
Yeah,
but it's good that it started as an inference and then was obvious storytelling,
and then was stated a bit more obviously. Yeah.
But I think a problem that you've said of some comics is when characters don't look different enough to be
the same.
Yes.
and yeah, and there was a defined art style here, and I didn't. They all had these quite square, quite strong jaws, and it gave me a really strong sense of like what their species looked like. They are humanoid, but there is something kind of square and rigid and strong about them. And so in terms of the visual language, I think it was quite successful in conveying something about the species as a whole to me.
Yeah.
As somebody who'd never heard of a Skrull, it was quite successful in conveying that. But in terms of just fucking differentiating between characters, in such a visual medium, man, and this has been a complaint that I've had on and off for a lot of different comic books.
Yep.
I want to be able to tell the difference between the characters. I don't want to have to sit there and think, who am I looking at?
Yeah.
I want to be able to just know. And when I'm reading a novel, I will forgive it sometimes that a bunch of people who live in the same place and have the same accent look the same on the page.
Yeah.
But you're literally drawing them. Like, it's not hard to give one of them a little fucking hat. It's not, you just give one of them glasses or a hat or a funky necklace. Like, it doesn't have to be anything big, does it?
Yeah. I think I'm going to be kind of on the fence here with both sides. On the one hand, I see exactly what you mean, that the artist and the writer, they could have contextualized some kind of difference when they're in their Skrull form. On the other side, I do also see, and this is from having the relevant knowledge, the Skrulls do all look the same when they are in their normal form.
Bit racist.
Exactly. Space racism at its finest.
You knew I was going to say it.
But there is it's written into the, on the one hand, it's kind of written into the species because they shapeshift. They don't mind being all looking uniform when they're not,
right,
because the personality kind of comes out in the shapeshifting, if that makes sense.
There was a conversation between two Skrulls. One of them they were both shapeshifted into middle-aged men. And one of them says, "Oh, whatever form you take, you're always beautiful."
I made a note of that as well. I thought, I originally thought surprisingly progressive, but then I think, as where you're going, if they shapeshift, they obviously don't care about gender presenting or anything like that, because they can be anything anyway. Yeah, no,
that was one of the things that and it was a kind of 3-panel horizontal down the page spread. Where they had a little kiss in between their shape shiftings, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah.
And then again, it was a relationship that we didn't really see develop.
Yeah, I think they had some tropes of a married couple, which were interesting because with something like this, and me not having to worry about thinking about anything else, like who is who or what is what, what are these, who is this, I was kind of looking at it like, are they just a couple by necessity as a cover, or are they an actual couple? And there was bits where they go, there's something deeper there. And I did appreciate it was a little, like that one was quite an obvious one, but I think a well-written one for the Skrull characters specifically.
It worked, didn't it?
One bit I liked was, I don't know how far the kids were in or not, because some things of this trope, like aliens on Earth, like, again, Third Rock from the Sun, the kid isn't a kid. He's like he's the oldest of them, but he's in a kid's body. So with the Skrulls, like, I gather they were still Skrull children, but I don't know if they were spies as well or not.
Well, yeah, I couldn't work it out. I couldn't work out if they were actually juveniles or they were...
Well, the bit that I took away, which answered it for me, was when they're openly talking about their plans. So they're all in on it. And then, so that's why I was thinking, what is their relationship between each other really? And it was the moment where they're saying, "Oh yeah, we got the guy to admit to the stuff, so we know where the thing is, and we'll go get it." And then one of the kids goes, "Ha, good work. By the way, how did you get the information from him?" And they're remembering back to how they got the information, which was basically one of them had sex with them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they go, "Oh, just have our ways." And that was the moment I was like, okay, so there's something here, because if they were all like co-workers, essentially, alien co-workers, one would be like, I had sex with a human, for the mission. So the fact that they weren't just open like that made me think, okay, so there is like, they are.
That makes sense.
And then as we find out later in the series, they are the children of the spies. So they do care about them, but there's a tension within them where it's like, they are children, but they have to be spies for the Skrull Empire and everything as well. And
they have a job to do.
Exactly, yeah. So there's little bits and pieces which, again, in the first half of the series, that I thought was interesting and, raised interesting points. And then just after like issue 4 and 5, it was just resolving the story. Like that was all we're doing now is resolving the story. So there could have been an interesting longer run, but again, with Marvel and DC, it's like, if it's not a main title, either it's winning awards or it's just getting canned. And I think that was what we had here was, let's see how this is received. People go, yeah, it's all right. And people go, oh, no awards? All right, it's been now. Back to Batman.
Is that what happened?
I assume. I don't know, but I do know there hasn't been any more Skrull comics of this. This story has not been continued as far as I know. So that in itself, unless they've been brought in someone else's title, then I think it was just binned off. And, was an interesting enough story in its own right, but yeah, I think no one...
5 issues of a comic book isn't a lot of space.
No, exactly. And that's why I think they raised not such big, it's not that they raised such big things in the beginning to be like, how are we going to explore these ideas? Oh no, it's only been 5 issues. But it was enough to be like, hey, this could be like a 10-issue run where you explore some of these ideas a bit more. And then it was, 5.
I feel like if they had more space, they would have had more space to explain what was going on.
You could have had for example, you could have had a relationship between the dad and someone at his work. And they're like, ooh, this Skrull finding technology is it's going to be good. Blah, those Skrulls. And the dad having to be like, yeah, fuck the Skrulls or whatever.
Well, just seeing some of him at Stark Corporation would have been really interesting.
Exactly. He hated Stark, which was a nice added little flavor. There were some shocking moments. And I say I use the term shocking as like more of like an intent of the bit rather than actually being shocked by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there was a bit later where the handler turns out to be like a traitor, which I think was kind of obvious.
Yeah.
And then the daughter turns out to be alive, and that's I didn't see that one coming, but I wasn't like, oh my god, they got me. I was more kind of like, oh, she's alive. So
I didn't care.
Yeah, and it hadn't been long enough.
Yeah. Well, we're not really hard to care about somebody being alive that you've not seen or cared about yet.
Exactly, yeah. I think at best, and you could only take this from it, at best I had that's what they're rescuing.
Yeah.
That's the mission. Oh, okay. Like that was it. But again, over a longer time, it would have been like, oh shit, the dead one's alive. Yeah. Like that's crazy. So there wasn't much. I like the art all the way through. Like as you said, I like the transforming art. Yeah. I thought that was quite good.
And it did a thing. It did a thing that I like, that I've talked about a lot.
Call off the witch hunt. It did a thing. We're fine now.
It did a thing that I like. There was a moment where somebody was slapping somebody while they were arguing with them, and all of the panels got really small, and they put them really close together, and they made it scan really quickly, so it actually felt to me like it scanned quickly,
like action is happening, like almost like your brain's doing a flip book. Because you're looking at each one so quickly.
Yeah. They sped the pace up for the action. And anybody that has listened to more than just this episode of the podcast will know that one of my biggest pet peeves in comic books is when an action scene is happening and they don't do anything to speed up the pace at which you read it.
And also when they have big chunks of dialogue over the action,
at the end of Supergirl.
Yes.
The end of Supergirl.
What was good here was the only dialogue was the male Skrull trying to tell the woman why she should stop hitting him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he didn't mind being hit. He was fine with it, but he was just like, we probably shouldn't do this because actually it's fine that, if you could stop punching me so I could tell you for a second, like that.
Yeah, but they did a good job.
Yeah.
Page layouts in general were fine.
I think the art was quite good.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, the artist, so I didn't know this going in until just reading the blurb now, they did the art for a title called Pride of Baghdad, and that
oh my god,
that it's interesting. I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to look up just to see if I get it right. I'm pretty sure the story is about lions in Baghdad. That's the Pride of Baghdad.
It's literally the Pride of Baghdad.
But it's written by Brian K. Vaughan, and that's one of his big titles. fact checking.
That looks sick.
Yeah, and that's one we could do at some point. But I remember at least the cover art looking good on that. So when I saw just now that this is the person, I thought, oh yeah, I think this kind of work for that artist. It's probably like a low stakes, like, yeah, I'll make it a bit interesting, but I'm not like breaking myself creatively, working on this.
The Pride of Baghdad art looks sick.
Yeah, exactly. So
it
that we know
really
they do
fit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think doing this was a breeze if they've done stuff like that.
Yeah, no, beautiful vistas. Really, really expressive. We need to read this.
Yes. Well,
this looks good.
It's on the list. It's definitely on the list. For our first title was a Brian K. Vaughan one. Yeah. So maybe should we mark off as like a special like episode 20 or episode 50 or something like that? Like we've made the milestone. We revisit Brian K. Vaughan to treat ourselves to a good one that we know is going to be good.
I feel like any milestones, we know who we're going to read for milestone episodes.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know why the dead forget he who shall not be named.
Well, have you got the klaxon ready?
I haven't prepared any kind of klaxon. I probably will by the time I edit and release this. But
it's not the first time he's been mentioned in the episode anyway.
No, true. I mentioned Watchmen, so yeah.
And I mentioned his Superman comic.
And his accent when talking about accent. He's always here. He's
Ever
always
present.
in the room.
Yeah.
You cannot escape. We cannot escape. Do you think this could be like some kind of horror film where we can't help but keep mentioning a certain person, and then we realize eventually that we're like both obsessed with him without realizing? And
I mean, he's good.
And also he's like kidnapped and like gagged in the corner. Like,
oh no. For anyone listening, like, please don't come here. Alan Moore is not here. No. It's okay.
We've only got Rob Liefeld and no one cares about him.
Who the fuck's Rob Liefeld?
He's the creator of Deadpool, and he's a bit of an asshole, but
is he?
Yeah, but a funny way. He's like someone called him out. Not even called him out. He called someone else out. So someone mentioned how there's superhero characters that are across Marvel and DC. They're just copies of each other, right?
Yeah.
Aquaman and Namor, bloody Superman and whatever the Marvel version of Superman,
Captain
Sentry.
Marvel.
Well, you're Captain Marvel to an extent. I think of obvious ones. Spider-Man, and there's a DC character called Tarantula. Like, there's
no shit. Is there really?
The Flash and Quicksilver. So there's all those ones. And someone pointed out, like, oh yeah, because Deadpool is a copy of Slade Wilson, and even the creator admitted to that. And then Rob Liefeld, who is the creator, tweeted back at that person, being like, I'm the creator, and no, he's not. So, fuck you. Like, I've just dunked on you on Twitter, kind of thing. And but then everyone else was like, mate, Deathstroke his name is Slade Wilson. Deadpool,
Wade
who
Wilson.
looks like him, you called Wade Wilson. Shut the fuck up. Like, we know, don't pretend like you didn't intentionally parody this existing character. And also, everything that's great about Deadpool came after he stopped writing the character. It was other people made him good. Before then, he was a generic mercenary character who quipped a bit. Like,
yeah.
So, again, basically, Rob Liefeld, he's easy prime target to make fun of. It's very funny. Also, the worst fucking art I've ever seen was his.
Okay. Let me have a go at it then.
What? Having a look at it?
Have you heard about that Rob Liefeld? The real dick.
I can't believe you disparaged the creator of Deadpool so easily. How dare you? No, he's never going to come on the show.
Can you please tweet about us, Rob Liefeld? Like, you can say whatever you want about me, baby.
Oh, if he dunks on us, and then people are like, what is this podcast that he's dunking on?
Well, this is why. Right, so we need to stop talking about Alan Moore and start talking about Rob Liefeld, because apparently he'll be a bellend on Twitter about it.
I mean, I hope so.
Should we tweet this episode at him?
What do you think of this? And then give him the mark of the time signature where we start talking about him. Yeah,
I'm there for it.
So I searched Rob Liefeld, and the thing that I was searching for was already one of the top things that comes up in his name. So he wrote and drew. So he wrote and drew a bunch of stuff. But I think like maybe to do with the Judge Dredd 2000 AD, that kind of stuff.
Right.
That was like a company. But he wrote and drew a lot of stuff. This panel is infamously known as one of the worst character depictions ever, right?
Okay.
So he drew and wrote Captain America.
Gosh, you're really building the suspense.
Oh, I am. Because if you think people look like this, this is prime. Should have gone to Specsaver's advert if this is how you think people look. It's awful proportions, isn't it?
I'm going to paint you a word picture. It's Captain America. He stood in side profile, but you can see the front of his pecs. His neck has...
He looks like he could have a plate under his face and eat from it without his hands.
Yeah, no, his jaw is the squarest thing I've ever seen. But mostly the fact that he stood side on, but you can see the front of his chest, which doesn't make...
It's horrible, isn't it? It's just bad. It's bad drawing.
It, you know, like a horse in a pantomime, where there are two people in the suit.
Yeah,
there are two people in
just
that
standing next to each other, but one's the head and the other's just goes up to the chest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's... Oh, Ryan, you've ruined my day with that. And he has a belt, but mate, it's awful.
If anyone listening at home wants to see this, literally just search Rob Liefeld, and then if you put C, it'll autocorrect Captain America, and then people will... this is the first result on images. And the first web result is a Reddit post going, what is the infamous Captain America drawn by Rob Liefeld? So, and naturally, obviously, someone's responded with it.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, so art is cool, going back to it.
Yeah, no, the art is cool, isn't it? Like,
it does the job in a very good way, I would say. I wouldn't say it's overly blowing me away, but it's very, very serviceable and enjoyable.
I want to go back to something that you said about it, because it is something that they nailed, is the transitions.
Yeah.
So their shape-shifting transitions look sick. There's a panel where Tony Stark's suit is halfway off. That looks sick. Like they nailed they nailed the artwork. It looks really pretty.
And this is what I mean by I think this artist, who I will get their name again because just to credit them, Niko Henrichon, I think it's pronounced, or Henrichon. One of those pronunciations I think is correct.
When I was a bit younger and I was studying linguistics, you know the funny symbols that you have in a thesaurus that tells you how words are pronounced?
The phonetic pronunciation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I knew how to read those.
Right.
I don't anymore.
It's
knowledge that I've lost.
Have you got the pronunciation of this name?
Well, I'm now trying to find it. I'm going to the source of all knowledge.
Wikipedia. Cool.
He's Canadian. Are you ready?
Yeah. Yep.
Henrichon.
Okay, so my second one was correct.
Henrichon,
yeah.
Henrichon, Mr. Henrichon.
Niko Henrichon. So, good art.
If you want to come on the podcast, Nico, we like you. Like, you've not said anything weird on Twitter and your drawings are really good.
Despite our English butchering of names that aren't 100% Western names.
If it's not Smith, I can't say it.
Yeah, exactly. We're the dumb ones.
100%.
Whenever anyone like there's a societal faux pas more so these days about mispronouncing names, right?
Yeah.
And I think as long as you get across like I'm the dumb one. I can't pronounce anything because I'm an idiot who is not experienced with the larger world. So as long as you get across that and be like, I am attempting to pronounce it with my limited capacity for language and names.
Yeah.
This is my attempt. Rather than people are like, what is that, Spanish? Or, that kind of...
Yeah.
I'm doing American, obviously. But that, like, as long as you're not a dick about it, then, and then if someone else is like, oh, I can't believe you pronounced that wrong, it's like, well, I tried my best, and that's all we can ask for, so...
Yeah, I did the job I could do.
Exactly. And also, we looked it up as well. And I was close with my second attempt, so...
Yeah, you were bang on.
Yeah, second time around.
The one I giggled at.
Yes. The one you mocked me for. Was oh, no, that's the real one.
The one that sounded silly.
Yes.
Was somehow the real way to pronounce it.
To us, because, again, we are naive, Western...
I've never left Norfolk.
Yeah, that kind of... We're basically that even though we left. But we left and went, it's too hot here. And then we came back again. I don't think there's too much else we can really say about it. Because, again, the starts off interesting. And then the ending is just a kind of generic tying up everything.
Yeah.
One thing I liked, this will be my last point because I just don't have many other points to make about it. My last point, I think, is I liked that the goals of the spies, the Skrull spies, it kind of was somewhere in between. Let's take over and enslave the human race, but also because if we don't, we've got nothing else, and our species might die out. So I think when you're writing, because these are essentially anti-heroes, for lack of a better term, maybe even as far as villains, but they're the protagonists of this story naturally. But it's a good way of framing it between bad intentions, but also necessary intentions, if that makes sense. So I like that it's kind of between those. It's somewhere between those 2 points, and it's kind of up to you where you think they really lie. Because obviously they're not fans of humans, but then the daughter has some, the
youngest daughter certainly has some leanings, doesn't she?
Yeah, and I think it was a mistake to push her all the way the other way. She's just gonna kind of go straight back to like, no, I'm full Skrull now. I'm all Skrull again. Like, I don't know. It was a bit rushed ending. I think in terms of final recommendation, if you're into this kind of stuff, if you want to read a Skrull story, it's probably the only one, I think. So there's the big one is the Secret Invasion storyline, but that's more of that was a big cross-title event, and it was about who's a Skrull, who's not a Skrull, that kind of thing.
If you want this, but better, watch Face Off.
Or the Vision. The Visions? Is
that
Tom King's Vision run.
100%, yeah. Tom King's Vision run gets you the same kind of Middle America, but not quite Middle America story.
Yeah.
And if you want some shape-shifting antics, then it's Face Off.
Yes. That's shape-shifting. I mean, I go more like...
Face Off is brilliant.
I mean, I go Animorphs to go for a real deep cut
maybe.
reference.
Yeah.
Also, you could go The Americans, as I mentioned earlier, or you go Third Rock from the Sun. So there's like...
So funny.
Those
so
are
good.
like 4 things that do this better. But I'm still kind of recommending this.
It didn't do anything wrong. It just wasn't very good.
It was functional. It worked well. If it was if it was a watch, it would tell time, but it wouldn't be impressive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It works, does the job, but it's not memorable, unfortunately. I think that's, and again, we never dick on any person's work,
It's a quartz day date without any more complications for people who like watches.
Whatever that means, absolutely.
Yeah. That's a deep cut.
Yeah. For wrestling, it's an elbow drop that looks fine. But you're not like, whoa! But you're just like, it's fine.
It's a pretty decent free kick that didn't quite lead to a goal.
It's one of those, without knowing football, as neither of us do, it's one of those kicks that the goalie saves, but you go, well, the goalie was really good there.
Yeah.
That's the only reason it got saved, was because they were such a good goalie.
Yeah,
but it was
absolutely.
still a decent kick, like that kind of thing. Yeah, final summary. So there you go.
It was pancakes when you ordered waffles.
It depends on the top. As long as it's the same toppings.
Yeah.
Because if it was different toppings, then you'd be annoyed. It's like if you like white bread and they only have best of both. So it's not even like brown bread, but it's like it looks the same.
It's a bit brown.
Yeah, it's just a little bit, and you're like, yeah, it's fine. Like it's like watching a Transformers film, and it's any of the other Transformers film because they all suck. But your expectations are still met with a fine because you expected a Transformers film. Does that make sense?
I like Shia LaBeouf.
I don't know. He's a bit all over the place, isn't he?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, but like sometimes in a bad way. Like I've heard he could be a bit of a dick as well.
It's
like rain on your wedding day.
10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife.
Yeah, and you're like, well, I guess this'll work.
It's fine. It just didn't inspire me.
It's very fine. Yes.
Yeah, it's bang average.
But it does enough interesting stuff where I wouldn't call it boring. That's the difference.
Yeah, we can go with that.
Yeah, I wasn't bored by it. I was just surprised it ended so quickly without...
How many shape-shifting Skrulls out of 5 would you give it?
I'd give it 2, but they look like 4 because of the shape-shifting. So
that was a good answer.
So it meddles out into a 3.
So,
yes.
Thank you for listening. If you are... What's his name?
Rob Liefeld.
If you're Rob Liefeld and you would like to defend your honor You can email us at comicliterate@gmail.com.
That's if you bloody still have some honor. And
Hey, fucking dickhead.
He's like, these British people hate me. It's like, no, we talk to each other like that all the time. It's fine. That's a term of endearment.
If I don't call you a cunt, it means I don't like you.
Unless you're Australian.
In which case, yeah, it can mean a multitudinous list of things.
Exactly.
If you would like to see some highlights of the Comic Literate podcast, which have been edited down into short videos, you can find us on TikTok or YouTube. Just search Comic Literate Podcast. And please leave a review on, it's like Apple Music and the Google podcasts and somewhere else. Wherever you're listening to us, leave a review.
Spotify and iTunes.
They're
the ones.
Thanks so much for your time and good night.
Oh, if you want to write to us and tell us to kill ourselves, I feel like that should be a running thing. Like, if you do want to tell us to kill ourselves because you hate our opinions so much, as happens in internet discourse, send your threats to, you remember?
I've already said the email address.
Did you say it? Do I blank it every time?
Yeah, every time.
I can't. Wow, I'm generally gonna have to. I'm gonna listen back to this and hear you say it and go, "How did I miss that?" Like,
I said if you're Phil Liefeld and you'd like to defend your honour,
that was it. I think I was thinking
comicliterate@gmail.com.
But that was because I was already going into like, "Fuck you, Liefeld." Like I was in that kind of headspace.
Yeah, no, I've covered it
this
straight
part,
off,
so,
mate.
Yeah, I'll edit this part. I'll just be like, "Hey, if you want
to leave it in, fucking leave it in."
Fine.
The world needs to know.
Leave my shame in the podcast. Fine.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.